Hey, everybody, it's Eddie from Tokyo. This is your cryptocurrency update from Japan. And if you ask yourself why your project in this crypto space gets good news, but the price doesn't move, well, I'm going to tell you that it's all about the lack of retail speculators right now. This is a very different time than we experienced in the end of 2017 and the beginning of 2018. So for right now, until that speculation returns, I'm going to be focusing on how XRP is used. I don't care what the use case is. It can be ODL, on-demand liquidity for remittances. It can be new apps that are using the digital asset. It could be looking at a new gaming partner. I don't care, because we are in a period of time where all these digital assets have to build out their ecosystem. So in this video, with the help of someone who's very, very smart from the Andreessen Horowitz camp, I'm going to try to succinctly explain that blockchains are entire ecosystems. XRP is the captured value of that business model that Ripple has, and they are actually a very complex ecosystem. XRP is the key mechanism to the network. And when we get this network effect and it grows, it becomes more valuable. And as it becomes more valuable, it is then defendable even against future competitors. So with the help of a video that premiered on May 28, I am going to show you what this really smart guy right here, Ali Yahya, has to say, because it applies to most all projects in this space. And those projects that are gaining traction have done so because of this building out of their networks. It's really solidified what is happening with Ripple's business model and the value being gained by XRP. You'll see that. So the Andreessen Horowitz, wow, they are a Goliath of a company in the Silicon Valley. They are investors for seed rounds to late stage projects. They are considered the super angels. And what they focus on are 7 different sectors with great strength in crypto and fintech. Tons of names you'd recognize, like Skype, Facebook, Pinterest, GitHub, Instagram, Coinbase, Libra, etc. Ali was a software engineer and researcher at Google Brain, and he's also a Stanford graduate with a master's in computer science. So let's go take a look at his video. You can see here in this particular shot, we're looking at a core template. This is a multi-sided platform, which you can see the protocol sits in the middle. So think of this. You can apply it to the interledger protocol with XRP. And then we have all the different kinds of participants in the network. All right, so this one could be Coil. And this one here could be Sologenic. And this one over here could be Rendimento Bank. This one could be SBI. This one could be, gosh, you name it, the new music app that was just recently released. So you get it. It is like Ali says, take for example a bazaar. The bazaar is the core value, but all of the network effect comes from those merchants that are there to interact with the consumers. Or you can look at the company called Lyft. Lyft is an app. That's at the core. But all the riders on the other side are part of that ecosystem that create the network. So here we're going to listen to just a little bit where he talks about the flywheel. And I know that this flywheel concept is very, very powerful. It is really at the beginning of when an idea and a vision begin. And for Ripple, that vision began in 2012. All right, have a listen, real short here.
I like to call this the layer 1 flywheel. It starts with the founding team, who might come up with an idea or a vision for a protocol. And with the help of a sort of core team of developers and the help of outside investors who may provide some financial capital, they are able to build the protocol and bootstrap some initial token value. Now, once the token value exists, then that creates a powerful incentive for miners or validators to provide some of the computational resources and hardware that actually give the platform its security and its functionality. Once the functionality exists, then there's an incentive for third-party developers to build useful applications, which in turn actually offer utility to end users. And eventually, as a result, a community begins to form that reinforces the original vision behind the protocol. And around this flywheel we go. The stronger the vision for the protocol is, the more the token is valued in kind of the broader market, which results in an even greater incentive for miners and validators to provide security and functionality, which encourages developers to build even more apps, and which in turn creates even more utility for end users. And around we go. Okay, and around we go. So this is where the building of the network begins. Now, the digital asset or the token, or let's just say for this video, XRP, we want to look at the token as that key mechanism for the captured value. And I will tell you that when you have competitors come into the space, it's always a little, you take pause, right? So we want to know, how do you defend that value? And is it something that can just be copied? Because it's all open source. That is the crazy thing. This is all open source. So I'm going to play this next portion for you, which is at the 11:05 mark. This is really short, but this talks about the captured value in ways that they couldn't if it weren't there. The token, of course, is the key mechanism for value capture. And there's a lot of nuance with how it is that it eventually does actually capture value. And there's a hard question that we have to engage with, because you could even ask, why is it that it captures any value at all, given that it'll be inevitably a competitive landscape, and everything involved in getting this flywheel started is open source. So there's a question of how this becomes defensible. Okay, so how does it become defensible? What creates a moat around the value that's being created, which is at the heart of the network? All right, let's listen to how he explains that. So historically, almost all value capture has relied on one of three things. It has been either a company that has some kind of secret that they are able to use to build something that nobody else can build. It could be some intellectual property that gives you like licenses or a right to fees or something like that that's enforced by some legal jurisdiction. Or it has been proprietary control of some resource that other people don't have, and as a result, you also end up with defensibility. And nothing of this sort exists at the heart of crypto, because everything's open source and everything can be so readily copied. Every line of code, every technical insight is open and kind of available to the whole ecosystem. So that's the question of layer one defensibility. And I would want to start with a kind of thought experiment. If you take the example of Lyft, and if you are like a loyal customer of Lyft or Uber or a multi-sided platform like that, and were to imagine that they were to go off and make everything about their technology open source, how defensible would you imagine it would be then? You imagine that would have a significant impact in whether or not you're likely to use Lyft versus some other platform. And I would wager it actually might have less of an impact than many may think, because of course, if someone were to copy the technology and create a clone, you might not readily switch to it because there are no drivers. There are no drivers to provide you with a service on the clone, whereas the existing version of Lyft does. So there's another force at play, which is called network effects, and the definition of a network effect is the phenomenon that the value of a network to a new user tends to increase with respect to the number of users who are already in the network. And so the canonical examples, this was first noticed at the dawn of the telecommunications industry with just telephone, like a telephone network, where if you have a network that has only one user, then it's not very useful because there's no one you can really call. If there are two people in that network, then a new user joining can now call two people, so it's a little bit more useful. And the more people there are in the network, the more valuable the network becomes to the next marginal user. The same applies with social networks. You want to be on the social network that has the most users as opposed to ones that have fewer. And even currency has a kind of network effect, because the more people accept any one form of currency, then the more value that currency offers a new person who might want to transact in it and might want to hold it or use it as a medium of exchange.
All right, so it's this network effect. It's exactly why I talked about in the last video with Mr. Kitao of SBI. He is building those networks down in the area of Southeast Asia, because that is going to have more users in the network. It'll become then more valuable to the next users who come in. This is why the rails have been laying down, and we are all just watching all of the announcements for the new rails that are being laid down, and everybody is like kind of shrugging their shoulders and often saying, well, but the price isn't doing anything. That's because we are still in this building out the network. And you can see from that page 19 of the Ripple, the flywheel set in motion. The flywheel for blockchain in the payments is set to spin faster. The extensive energy put into proof of concepts and pilots and the steady building of networks over the past 2 years has resulted in a clear understanding of blockchain's value and feasibility. With value comes usage, and the wheel makes its first rotation, and trust is won. So we have not made that full rotation yet. We're getting very, very close. And I think this really hit home for me, because I know that in the last video that was done by Thinking Crypto and the CEO of SBI Ripple Asia was talking about the pilots and the limited projects that are there. There was a lot of people who left messages like, oh, great, another pilot. Well, this is just what's required in that steady building of the networks. And these things just don't happen overnight. We're talking about major shift in how banking is done. And as Adam Traitman said, ODL changes everything in the fundamentals for that layer of fintech. So please also remember that the senior VP, Marcus Treacher, he said in June, I'm on the XRP Arcade site that has a great article to this, because he was in a video where he said that the Ripple global coverage is going to come by mid-2021. We are very, very close, very close. All right, now let's really drill down to token value. And I'm going back to the video with the help of Ali, and you can see that the value becomes embedded in this ecosystem, and it can't just be copied. You can't just take it away. As that network gets bigger and is becoming the winning network, it gets a monetary premium. All right, let's listen to this. This is really short here.
And all the while as this is happening, every component of this gets integrated into the ecosystem. So you can imagine the token becomes integrated into wallets and exchanges. Useful applications get integrated into like the user interfaces that people use to interact with everything, into browsers, into just generally the entire ecosystem that the internet is, and that crypto is becoming a part of. And as a result, the token value becomes embedded into the fabric of this broader ecosystem in a way that is not readily displaceable. You can't just readily copy the technology and take with you the entire ecosystem that is built around the token. So the fact that you've got these virtuous feedback loops, these network effects, the fact that you get defensibility from integration between a protocol, which is driven economically by the token at its heart, and everything else outside of it, tends to result in winner-take-all dynamics, which is the opposite of what you might think, given that everything's open source and copyable. And as this happens, the winning networks end up creating a kind of inescapable gravity well, such that you kind of end up having to join the network that's winning as opposed to start a new one or join a new one, just because the network effects are so powerful. It's just very hard to get bootstrapped elsewhere. And as a result, the token ends up kind of taking on this kind of monetary premium as the form of money that coordinates all economic activity within the network, and as the kind of store of value and medium of exchange that all of the participants in that network end up relying on.
Great. So I couldn't have said it any better. That is what we've got, this business model that is the heart of crypto projects. And Ripple or Tezos or VeChain or Ethereum, it doesn't matter. The building out of the networks is required. And without crazy speculative retail investors right now, like we saw in 2017 and the beginning of 2018, as I said, well, then patience is required during this building process. And I imagine that this understanding will help you, I hope, make decisions on what projects you want to get into, because I think it applies across the board. All right, everybody, I really hope that was useful. Let's jump to some fluff. On the Andreessen Horowitz website, it was very interesting. On their Who We Are page, the first sentence said, and it's in quotes, "A culture is not a set of beliefs. It's a set of actions." And it quotes Bushido. Bushido is a code. It's a code of conduct that emerged in Japan from the samurai during the Edo period, so around the mid-1600s. And this code contains key principles that the samurai had to uphold. And I think that when you are getting into researching this, you may come across a gentleman by the name of Nitobe Inazo. And he actually added one more virtue to make it 8 virtues, and it is this virtue of self-control. And it comes from a book that he published in 1900. He was an educator, a diplomat, a politician. And in 1884, he traveled to the United States, where he studied economics and political science at Johns Hopkins. And that's where he met the Quaker Mary Patterson Elkington, who he then later married. But he went on to attain 5 doctorate degrees and write this fantastic book in English called Bushido, The Soul of Japan. Now, there's lots of versions out there that have been republished. And if you're not one that can really get through these books and you prefer, you can find it on the Audible, which is the books that are read to you. This is a company, an Amazon company, and this is another way to enjoy it. But I can tell you for sure, this is really, really an interesting read or an interesting listen. And so today I decided to do on my extended fluff on the Coil site to look at Bushido, the code for the samurai. And it's an inspiration that drew from Confucianism and is relatively, well, a conservative philosophy and system of beliefs that places a great deal of importance on loyalty and duty. And I have all 8 principles in this particular blog, and I look at it by the kanji character, how to pronounce it, the meanings of that character, which Japanese and Chinese, when they use the characters, it's not just one simple word translation. It's more conceptual. So for this particular kanji character Ji, which means justice. It also means righteousness. It also means morality, honor, loyalty. So this is the core value that the samurai had, incorporating into the Bushido principle was justice into your life that is required, reflecting on what is fair and upholding for the value of an upstanding moral character. I will put a link to this in the description below so you can look at each individual virtue. But in looking at the three kanji characters that make up Bushido, it is kind of interesting in itself. Bu meaning warrior, military, chivalry, arms. And then this middle character, Shi, is gentleman, scholar, samurai. And the lower character here is Do. This is the road, the way, the street, the journey, the district course. It's the way you go for your teachings. So that's why when you get this Do at the end of Sado, which is tea ceremony, it's the way of tea, or Shodo, the way of calligraphy. Yeah, you'll see this Do is in a lot of the teachings and traditional art forms in Japan because it's the way to do it. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video. I really was happy to find that video from Ali, and I think it really helped make more clarity in my mind when Ripple talks about the network effect and the flywheel. Okay, everybody, yeah, do take care. Sayonara for now. Bye-bye.